When I visited the American Four Corner region, I was fascinated by the dwellings and ruins left by the Anasazi, people thought to be the ancestors of modern Pueblo Indians, who inhabited this region from the time when Christ was born. It is historically known that more than 1,000 years ago, Indian tribes lived in various remote areas of New Mexico, particularly in the fertile valleys along the great river Rio Grande. Near Bernardillo, in the Coronado State Monument, one can still find examples of original petroglyphs found inside old ceremonial rooms.
It tells the story of two cultures coming together. Coronado and his entrada coming in 1540 to New Mexico, and the Pueblo Indians who had lived here for hundreds and hundreds of years. The beginning of history starts here in New Mexico and here at Coronado State Monument.
The most significant and sophisticated example of Anasazi Indian culture is found in the Chaco National Park. Chaco Canyon is located in northwest New Mexico, and to reach it, one must face a long panoramic drive along an unpaved, dusty and often muddy road. In this high desert landscape, the Anasazi, using their skilled masonry techniques, built in the mid-800s massive, multi-story, great stone houses with hundreds of rooms and large, round ceremonial rooms called kivas. Pueblo Bonito was the largest structure with more than 600 rooms and 40 kivas. Kivas were large underground rooms, usually accessible from the roof through a ladder and used for religious and secret ceremonies.
You will see Casa Rinconada, the great kiva, up on a little hill there.
The Anasazi were also formidable scientists. The position of certain buildings and windows fits exactly with the sun's position at critical days of the year, and important farming decisions were based on their astronomical knowledge. North of Chaco, the Aztec ruins are another example of U-shaped Anasazi village, containing 500 rooms in 3 stories.
It's a great place. It's very well preserved, so it gives us a lot of information about the lives of the people who lived here.
I could crawl through tiny doorways, descend into a reconstructed great kiva, listen to recorded Native American music, and try to recapture the solemnity that must have pervaded Anasazi's secret ceremonies. After driving for hours on twisting mountain roads into the heart of the Gila wilderness, located in southwest New Mexico, I feel like in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by breathtaking natural panoramas. In reality, I am on the banks of a once busy Mogollon highway, the Gila River. In the 13th century, also the Mogollon people built cliff dwellings in the caves along the Gila Canyon. 40 rooms can be identified within the 6 caves of the Gila cliff dwellings.
The monument is particularly special to me because it is the only unit in the National Park Service that is specifically set aside to protect the remains of the Mogollon culture, which includes the Memories and the Tularosa phases. So this is unique in that sense, and this particular culture is one of the three major Southwest Native American cultures that are prehistoric. Plus it is unique too in that we are protected by the 500,000 acres of the Gila wilderness. So you see it today as it pretty much was 700 years ago when the people were living here.
In southwestern Colorado, this is the fertile Montezuma Valley, at the foot of one of the most famous American archaeological sites, Mesa Verde. A true step back in time. About 1400 years ago, and long before any European exploration of North America, the ancient foreigners, or Anasazi, as the Navajo called them, lived in this region. They built their dwellings beneath the overhanging cliffs of canyons, which are difficult to reach. They lived and flourished, eventually creating elaborate communities built in stone within the sheltered alcoves of the canyon walls. The most renowned cliff dwelling, called Cliff Palace, contains more than 150 rooms and was built between the 12th and the 13th centuries. The Anasazi were good builders, artistic in their craft, and skillful at making a living from a difficult land. Their dwellings were made of sandstone, cut and cemented with mud and water. They spent most of their time in farming and getting food. Archaeologists have been trying to understand the life of the Anasazi, but despite years of excavations, analysis, classification, and comparison, our scientific knowledge remains sketchy. The round objects in front of the buildings are remnants of kivas, subterranean chambers used for religious and mysterious ceremonies. More challenging was the visit to Balcony House, a ruin that sits in a high alcove in the west wall of Soda Canyon, and that can only be reached by climbing a series of step ladders. The visit is not for those who fear heights or tight places. Careful attention to detail and the skill necessary to construct a village in this particular alcove make Balcony House a classic example of Pueblo architecture. The Anasazi lived in Mesa Verde for less than 100 years. Then, suddenly, by the year 1300, Mesa Verde was deserted, and nobody really knows what happened.
That room up there, see the ghost lines? We call those ghost lines going around that soot, that black area up there. That's where a fire had been in a room until it collapsed.
I have now entered Arizona, and on my way to Page, I stopped to visit another interesting archaeological site, the Betatakin ruins of the Navajo National Monument. Betatakin, which in Navajo means ledge house, was discovered only in 1909. Here, in the 13th century, a few Kayenta Anasazi farmers established and built their homes under the south-facing canyon's shelters.
Here we have the juniper tree. That's what we have. Do you guys see that purple berries? Aztec Canyon, basically. That's where it comes out. And this is the Navajo sandstone.
A strenuous 5 hours round-trip hike guided by a Navajo female ranger takes me to the bottom of the canyon where the ancient village is located. The view from the bottom of the canyon is truly amazing. The alcove is 110 meter wide, 136 meter high, and 46 meter deep.
go to the Hopi village today, they still do have a square kiva, just to let you guys know. But we're going
For me, it was a fascinating experience, although the climb back out was the equivalent of walking up a 70-story building. I was eager to return to the Horseshoe Canyon, a remote section of Canyonland, home to some of North America's most outstanding ancient Indian rock art and a beautiful hike. While descending into the canyon, I tried to imagine how the ancient residents must have hunted the then existing megafauna. Here is a petrified footprint. A few years ago, I was lucky to film the pictographs of the Horseshoe Shelter before they were damaged by the partial collapse of an overhanging cliff.
Unfortunately for them, they decided to walk out to the canyon and see if they could see somebody shooting. And when they turned around, what it was the rock separating up here, and it all collapsed.
Some of my pictures taken at that time are now an historic document. It was here, in the bottom of the canyon, that ancient Indians left the perennial signs of their existence. Life-sized apparitions seemed to float out of the wall, figures of humans and animals. Sometimes it's possible to recognize their meaning, like these animals that seem to interest even this porcupine watching placidly from the top of a tree.
Probably wasn't a habitation site. It was probably a place where these small nomadic groups met.
The great gallery is breathtaking. The armless, legless figures wore mask-like, ghost-like faces, looking like souls from another world. There is a peculiar atmosphere in this place. Even rangers talked in whispers of what their creators were trying to tell us.
Or if it's their vision of their ancestors and their after-death memories.
I think that the art here honors this beautiful canyon rather than the art itself being the only draw to the canyon. That's what draws me to this place. I think that's what drew the people who made this art originally. It was the canyon.
The canyons, mesas and rivers of the Colorado Plateau have spirit of their own. If one spends enough time learning their secrets, it is the feeling of the place that seeps into the soul.